22 years before the sky burned, a Vashtu supply hauler drifted dead in the black, 40 light-years from any world its crew called home. Coolant lines ruptured. Life support failing by the hour. Its distress beacon screamed into a void nobody expected to answer, because in that sector of space, in that decade, nobody trusted anybody enough to come. A human freighter answered anyway. Her name was the Coldwater Run, a rust-streaked bulk hauler out of the series shipping lanes, captained by a woman named Dana Whitfield who had exactly one rule posted on her bridge: if they're dying, you go. She didn't ask what species. She didn't check the political charts to see if the Vashtu Compact was friend or rival. She burned half her fuel reserve doing an emergency correction burn that her own engineer called reckless, docked with a ship full of strangers who'd never seen a human before, and spent 6 days patching their reactor with parts scavenged from her own ship's guts. Nobody on Earth gave her a medal. Nobody back home even knew. She logged it, filed it, and went back to hauling grain. The Vashtu remembered. 22 years later, the Kryv Ascendancy came out of the dark with 300 warships and a doctrine that made no distinction between conquest and extermination. They didn't negotiate. They didn't demand surrender. They simply arrived at the edge of a system, and within days that system's lights went out. The Vashtu Compact was next. Everyone knew it. Their fleet was proud, disciplined, and outnumbered 4-1. Their high command ran the numbers 11 different ways and got the same answer every time: extinction, with honor, in maybe 6 days. It was an old engineer named Rel Osha, the same Rel who, 22 years earlier, had been a junior technician standing in a dying reactor room while a human woman with grease on her hands told him, in a language he didn't yet speak, that he wasn't going to die today, who stood up in the War Council and said one word: humans. The room laughed. Politely, but they laughed. Humanity had no standing armada to speak of. Scattered colonies, a patchwork of independent captains, no central military worth mentioning on a strategic map. A borrower's fleet, some called them, cargo haulers, prospectors, retrofitted mining rigs. Rel didn't argue the numbers. He just said, I don't need their ships. I need what's in them. The message went out on every frequency humanity still monitored, encoded in old trade band protocols nobody had used in 2 decades, translated by a Vashtu linguist who'd spent 3 sleepless nights making sure the words would land right. It didn't ask for military aid. It didn't invoke treaties, because there weren't any. It said, 22 years ago, one of you came for us when you owed us nothing. We are dying now. We are not asking you to fight our war. We are asking you to remember that you already chose, once, who you are. It named the ship. The Coldwater Run. It named the captain. Dana Whitfield was 61 years old and retired, living on a converted mining platform above Titan, when her grandson forwarded her the message with the subject line, "Grandma, is this you?" She read it twice. Then she picked up a comm line she hadn't used in 15 years and made exactly one call. What happened next didn't look like a war fleet forming. It looked like chaos. It looked like Captain Owen Marchetti, hauling or out past the belt, cutting his contract short and broadcasting to his entire trade network, "Vashtu are dying. Whitfield's calling it in. Anyone still owes me a favor, this is where you pay it." It looked like a fishing supply runner named Priya. No, not that name, scratch it. It looked like a woman named Renata Ibarra, who ran cold storage transports out of the Jovian moons, arriving with 4 ships full of nothing but medical supplies and welding rigs, because that's what she had. It looked like independent miners bringing rock-cutting lasers that had never been built for combat but could still punch a hole through a hull. It looked like colony ships stripping their own hull plating to reinforce someone else's. It looked like 11,000 vessels, freighters, tankers, retrofitted prospecting rigs, a handful of actual gunships, and one repurposed luxury liner still wearing its pleasure cruise paint job, converging on Vashtu space in a formation that no strategist would have designed and no admiral would have approved. They came anyway. Not because Earth ordered them to. Nobody could have ordered 11,000 independent captains to do anything. They came because Dana Whitfield had once said if they're dying, you go, and somewhere along the way that had stopped being her rule and become theirs. The KRYV fleet arrived at the Vashtu home system expecting 6 days of methodical slaughter. What they found was a swarm. Human ships weren't built for war, and it showed, in the ugly welds, the mismatched hull plating, the way half the warships in that formation were still broadcasting cargo manifests out of old habit. But there were so many of them, and they didn't fight like a fleet. They fought like people who had nothing left to lose and everything left to prove, ramming disabled hulls into enemy formations, running suicide close maneuvers that no KRYV tactical model accounted for, because KRYV doctrine had never met an enemy that would trade a 2 million credit freighter for 30 seconds of a warship's attention. Dana Whitfield flew the Coldwater run into the heart of it, 22 years older, one good hand on the stick, and did the same thing she'd always done, went toward the ship that was dying. It was Rel Osha's ship this time. Vashtu command vessel, half its hull open to vacuum, 40 crew trapped behind a bulkhead with 11 minutes of air. The Coldwater run took a hit meant for that bulkhead. Took another. Held the line long enough for Owen Marchettis or haulers to punch through the KRYV screen and pull the trapped crew out through a hole cut by a mining laser never designed for war. The KRYV fleet broke on the 4th day. Not because they were beaten in raw numbers, they weren't, but because an enemy that keeps coming after losing everything is an enemy no doctrine can calculate for. They pulled back into the dark and didn't come back. Rel Osha stood in the wreckage of his own command deck 3 days later, staring at the battered hull of the Coldwater run through a viewport, and asked the question every Vashtu on that ship was asking. Why? You had no fleet. No treaty. No reason. Dana Whitfield, standing beside him with a new scar and an old grin, just shrugged. You were dying, she said. That's the whole reason. That's always been the whole reason. Behind her, on 11,000 battered hulls scattered across a system that was still, impossibly, alive, that was the only reason any of them needed to.